Okay, before we start anything such as the masking or the out of bounds special effects, what we must do first is create the actual shape of the picture frame. You can see here on the completed project, we have this picture frame here. Almost looks like a photograph that the snowboarder is jumping out of. Well, this shape is really not that hard to create, but we must do that first so we can determine where that will be on the image. So to begin, let's go ahead and activate the snowboarder layer, and then just go ahead and click on the new layer icon, make a new layer right now, and I want you to call that picture frame. Easy enough. And then so what we're going to do now is draw the shape of the picture frame that the snowboarder is jumping out of. And so over here on the toolbar, select the rectangular marquee tool and just come over to the image, click and drag out or draw out a selection that sort of resembles the size of a picture frame or a photo. Just like this. And I'll probably make it just a little bit bigger than I need, because that way if I resize it, it'll retain some of its quality. That looks pretty good. Doesn't have to be really perfect. You can come back and perfect this technique later on. So after we've created our selection like you see here, let's go ahead and just fill that with a color. So let's just use white. I'll press D and X on the keyboard, and when I do that, that'll change the foreground color to white. I can flip back and forth between those keys. When I have the foreground white, I'll go ahead and click in the middle of the selection there to fill that. Great. Let's come up here to select, deselect. So after we've filled that, let's just go right over here to the layers palette. On that picture frame layer, I just want you to lower the opacity of that, just so you can see the background behind it. And this will help us decide if we can see the background behind the shape. That will help us decide where to position it. And so let's go over here to Edit, and down here to Transform, and select Distort. And Distort, all we have to do is bring the mouse pointer over to each corner or one of the corners on the shape here, and you can just move it around and really create any type of shape we want. But our goal here is to create some type of perspective, some type of three-dimensional shape or photo or picture frame, whatever you want to call it. And so we're just going to go ahead and just move this around here. You can click in the middle of this selected shape and move it as well. And so I'm just going to move this down. And this is going to be my little photograph that the snowboarder is jumping out of. So it really depends. You can make it long, small. You can really do whatever you want, as long as it's big enough so he has plenty of room to jump out of the photo. And we can also go up here to Edit, Free Transform before we confirm this, and we can also just resize it. So even if I'm not fully satisfied on the shape yet, I can switch back and forth between different transformation modes. Isn't that cool? Let's go ahead and click back on Distort. And I'll continue distorting this image. Now, this is where you're going to have to use a pretty good eye for this perspective, because perspective does have certain rules. It may not look realistic. If most of the time, though, to make this as easy as possible, most of the time when things are closer to you, they are a little bit taller. You see that? And then when they're farther away, they get a little bit smaller. So you can see the sides on this are just a little bit wider, a little bit taller. And then when it goes inward, you can see it just gets a little bit smaller over here. And that's just kind of an easy way just to figure that out. Besides making something that looks like this, that's just not going to look right. But if I make this side over here smaller, then that'll give the illusion that it has perspective and it has a little bit of a three-dimensional look to it. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to make that just a little bit taller and bring this in a little bit. When you do this, you sort of have to imagine the end result. You can see if you see real closely here, and it's not going to let me select another tool, so I'm just going to have to show you with this mouse. But if you look at the snow, how it's just coming out if you can kind of imagine it coming out of the picture frame. You see that? And then we're getting the very bottom here with little tiny bits. See, if I come down too low, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult to make that look as real, and it's almost too small. But I like right where this little snow cloud, just right where it ends, or the edge of it, I'm just going to position that right there. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. I even might just go just a little bit more. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. But before we do that, we must confirm this selection here. So what I'm going to do is just press the Enter key on the keyboard, and that will confirm that.